So I just want to share just a quick thought that I had today, which I thought was very powerful for me, especially because we've been talking about the Torah we've been dealing with, is that Reb Nosson opens up saying that if one lives and looks and gazes at the Tachlis, and what's the Tachlis? The Tachlis is living with the awareness that every single thing that happens to us is for our ultimate benefit. It's living with the awareness of Bayomahu Yeh Hashem Echad U'Shmo Echad. Living with the awareness of it's all good. Hashem is running the world. It's the best. Kulo Tov. That's what Reb Nosson said. That if one lives with this awareness, this integrated knowledge of Hashem running the world, then one won't experience any pain. The root of all pain comes from the fact that one is lacking that awareness. And Reb Nosson explains that really that verse of Bayomahu Yeh Hashem Echad U'Shmo Echad is referring to the Messianic times of Mashiach. And that's a part of what we're mourning. What we're mourning right now is the fact that the Beis HaMikdash represented that time or that place which you went there and you experienced Hashem. You had that clarity. And right now we're lacking that clarity in the world. And that's part of what we're mourning. But on a more personal note for myself, I don't know if anyone could resonate with this idea, but like the idea of Mashiach sort of is I'm very conflicted with that idea, meaning from a real core place. I'm conflicted with the idea of Mashiach. Hey, Rebbe, good to see you, brother. So why? Because meaning Mashiach, I'm comfortable where I'm at. I sometimes get into that place where, things, they're not that bad, why do Mashiach, like this, where the whole world will live with that clarity. Like my lower self is like my nefesh and myself. I'm not like crazy excited about it. I'm not like flying like we need Mashiach. And the only times when I think I need Mashiach is that I think is coming from an unhealthy place. It's coming from that place that I just can't handle the world where it's at right now, and therefore escape Mashiach. And like I was trying to connect with myself, like what is it? What's holding me back? Like I know on an intellectual level that Mashiach is the highest. Mashiach's the highest. It's the time where the whole world will be experiencing that clarity, that awareness of Hashem running the world. And what is it? Like, why can't I just like, okay, fine, it's going to be so much better. It's going to be the best. The whole world is going to be experiencing the smile of the Oras Panim of Hashem, the smile of Hashem. Like, it'll be revealed. The goodness, the lovingness of the one and the oneness of Hashem will be revealed. Like, why? Like, okay, so like hop on board and like, let's want it. Like, why am I so stuck? And I was thinking, and we've been discussing that in this Torah and Reb Nosson, that, and in our series that we've been doing on Cheshbon HaNefesh, that our lower self doesn't like transition. It likes comfort. And even though my life right now has hardships, has ups and downs, has struggles, but at least I know it and I'm aware of it. And I'm comfortable in this place of the ups and downs. And like my lower self is like, it's okay. But like Mashiach's like an unknown. And we've been discussing this idea of like people, like abusive relationships, like people know intellectually that it's bad for them, but like somehow they always find themselves back in that relationship because that's what they know. And I was just thinking for myself, I had this thought during the spirit list, like for myself, like what I need to be doing, and I just wanted to share this before we get into the class, what I need to do is really talk to that place within me, which is nervous of change and transition, and is scared of leaving its comfort zone, and to really talk to that place, to let it know that, you know what, like, I understand you're scared. I understand you like comfort, but living a world where we're experiencing that clarity of Hashem running the world. It's the best. And let's do it together. Like, let's hop on board and daven for that place. And daven for that place within each one of us. Like, I was trying to tap into mourning the Golos. And I'm like, you know what? I like it here. Even though I don't really like it here, but like I'm comfortable here. That's really the word. I'm comfortable where I'm at. I know it. And I was just thinking for myself that, at least for me, maybe to start by at least davening to Hashem to open up that place within me to let it be okay with change. Let it be okay with transition. Let it be open to it. I know it intellectually. I know when I'm living with Hashem and when I'm living with that clarity, it's the best. So imagine the whole world living with that clarity. It's the best. But just to talk to that place and to open that place up, which doesn't want, and to really tap into that place, which is nervous of shifting things up. So I just wanted to share that before we get in. Does anyone have any thoughts or any ideas before we move on? I mean, that was just something, because I'm trying to mourn the Shekhinah. I'm like I have this I'm conflicted within with the idea of Mashiach, or the idea of third base Hamikdash, and it's all of this and everything's wild. But that is only coming from that place within me, which is doesn't want to be uncomfortable, doesn't want to shift, doesn't want to open itself up to the unknown.
That is like a major part of a survival mechanism, and I think what you came upon with talking to that part of yourself, we all need to say we're safe, everything's okay, whatever it is, to feel supportive, to allow for that change, because we are wired in that way for survival. So that's why we don't like change. We don't want anything, because it could be dangerous.
100%.
So that was very profound what you came up with, to talk to yourself, because that is
or to daven for yourself for that place. Meaning, I was just davening for that place. It's okay, it will be good. I know it intellectually. And let's go into it together. Let's try to ask Hashem from that place, both of us. We know it's best for really. I know it's comfortable within this uncomfortable world. I know it's comfortable, not to think out of the box and to think or to live in that reality, which is new and chadash. Reb Zakkai, Reb Shalom, first of all, good to see both of you. Yeah, so I just wanted to share that, just to open up. L'chaim.
Give me a little summary.
A quick summary is that the idea of Mashiach, or the idea of, meaning I know intellectually the idea of the fact that a world where the whole world is living with the clarity and the awareness that Hashem is running the world, it's the best. But within myself, I'm very conflicted with the idea. Right now, it's the mourning period of the Beis Hamikdash. It's just the mourning period where we're mourning over the Beis Hamikdash, which represented that place which you went there and it was clear. There were open miracles there. And it was clear that there was a Hashem in the world. But myself, within my child within, is very conflicted about this idea. Is very conflicted about, it's a big unknown, and I'm comfortable where I'm at. And when I do want Mashiach, or when I want that, it's usually coming, at least for myself, it's coming from an unhealthy place. It's I need to escape. It's too much. I can't handle it. It's time to book. And that's when I start thinking about that. So and this is what we've been discussing. I think we mentioned it yesterday, just the idea of our nefesh, our lower self, or our child within, doesn't like change. And even though it's uncomfortable in this place, meaning this world has its ups and downs, and there's ups and downs within us daily, when we shift moods, and we're not living in this utopia where it's all good. But still, we know it. We're aware of it, and we're comfortable in that, because we experience that, and we know the ups and downs, the daily ups and downs. And when it gets too much, then we start like, whoa, we need a book. But like when things are the normal ups and downs of life, we're okay with. And that realization that I had was just like to really, if I really want to open up to mourning over the Beis Hamikdash and wanting and really yearning for Mashiach and really yearning where the whole world will be experiencing Hashem Echad U'Shmo Echad, I have to really address that place within, which is not so excited and is nervous about change, is scared of the unknown, even though intellectually I know it's the best, because I know whenever I'm living with that awareness, it's the highest. So either however you want to address that, or with myself, either through talking to it, communicating with it, or davening for it. So that was my thought today. Now, let's get in. Yeah? Any thoughts before we move on?
Hey, Nach. Love you.
Okay. Hold on. Let's get this moving. Okay.
Where are we holding Likutei Moharan? Or are we?
We're doing Likutei Halachos.
You always do that to me, huh?
You're the best. We're in Netilas Yadayim 4. I'm jumping around. I just want to do this one little piece and then go into the idea of Tzizis, how he applies this whole Torah into how this connects to Tzizis, the mitzvah of Tzizis. Let's open up. So I just wanted to bring this right here, because we've been talking about like how Reb Nosson says to close your eyes and then to open yourself up to the oneness. And then when you come back, I just want to show you how Reb Nosson brings this down. And when Reb Nosson, it's hard to express in words an experience, a meditative experience that Reb Nosson is trying to get you and what Reb Nachman is trying to get you to. But here it's like, I think it's as clearly articulated as possible. So I just want to show this. This is in Likutei Halachos, Netilas Yadayim 4. So look what he says. This is the main piece of advice, the truest piece of advice when one is experiencing any pain or any suffering, chas v'shalom, God forbid, that is happening to us in a national level, or that is happening to any individual in his own specific life, in his own individual life. Rahman al-Litzlan. There is no proper advice to leave them and to remove himself, to run away from them, except through nullifying himself within the tachlis, within this awareness, within the oneness of Hashem. The only way to truly, which is what Mashiach, and that's what Mashiach times is going to be, where we're living in that time space of living within the oneness. But for us now, the only way to truly, really run away and to really escape is through opening ourselves up to the oneness of Hashem. The Hainu, and that is listom einov bechazaka, that is to close one's eyes with strength. Now he's explaining how to do it. Velasos atzmo kiyashaim, and to make himself as if he's sleeping. It's so deep what he's saying. Ulevat, I'm just going to read the next words. Ulevatal atzmo betachas habitul ki ilu ein bo shum hargosha klal, and to nullify himself into the oneness as if he is not feeling anything. And what Reb Nosson is explaining right now is a very, very, very deep meditative experience where he closes his eyes and he gets himself to a place where he's as if he's sleeping, meaning his nefesh, which is his physical sensations, his emotions, and his fleeting thoughts, it's as if he's sleeping. He's not experiencing any of that, and he's not feeling any of that. And from that place, he could open himself up to really rak ledabek ulevato machshavto el hori and sof yisbarach. And from that place, one could cleave, one could attach, and to nullify his mind, his neshama, to the infinite light of the blessed, of the one that shall be blessed, into the oneness of the infinite one. Only from a place where one is, only from a place where one is completely, as long as one is stuck within his physical sensations or emotions, he can't truly open himself up to the oneness of Hashem. And of course, Reb Nosson is going to mention lower, there's obviously madregas to it. And by the way, the Shulchan Aruch talks about this with regards to Shmona Esrei. He calls it hispashtus hagashmius, to get to a place where you leave pretty much you're like freed from physicality. That's the Shulchan Aruch. It's in, I think, Tzadi Gimel, Simon Tzadi Gimel in Shulchan Aruch, or one of the early Tzadis, where he says that every Shmona Esrei should be this deep experience. V'zeh yochol, and look what he says, V'zeh yochol kol adam lasos, and every single person has this capability to do this, to close his eyes, make himself as if he is sleeping, as if he's not experiencing, kilu ein bo shum hargosha klal, and from that place, which is the surmei ra, removing himself from this world, from his nefesh, and from that place, he could really truly open himself up to being davuk and just from visualizing and focusing on Hashem, Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, who is Shivisi Hashem Lenegdi Summit, to really open up to that place. Even though one can't completely, as we're going to talk about soon, one can't completely nullify himself, because to truly nullify himself and to truly, one has to cleanse himself. Nevertheless, anyone could open himself up to this experience if he wants to for a little bit. And through this, one nullifies the pain and the tribulations and the suffering. And this is what we mentioned, that when one comes back, they could be more intense. And you need to, and one needs to overpower those dinim, those negative feelings, after one has a deep spiritual experience of being nullified within the oneness of Hashem and really experiencing that. How does one do that? Through Chidushei Torah, either through having new realizations in Torah, in how he needs to grow and how he needs to move further, what practical steps he actually does, or just a new excitement, a new cheshek. And as he said, that comes from the imprint of that experience. Fine, I just wanted to bring that because I think it's very powerful how Reb Nosson is articulating an experience of a real deep meditative experience. So now I just wanted to get into Tzizis for a second, because yesterday we spoke about waking up in the morning and going to sleep, and just a brief introduction, I think, to this piece. First of all, is everything clear so far? Yeah? Amazing. So
he's talking about Vipassana. It's great.
What?
He's talking about Vipassana. It's great.
Vipassana? What is that?
It's like a Buddhist meditation.
Yeah, I mean, you see, Rabbi Clapping, they talk, meaning they definitely, it's definitely in Torah. Meaning, but I just want to say that in Judaism, you don't see it as much in the writings, meaning these practices, because it's not the focus. the focus in Judaism is not to escape this world. It's rather it's an inside out reality. It's to be living. It's not that we should be getting to a place where we could live in a state of das, where we're involved in this world. It's not about completely detaching and living in that place of detachment on top of a mountain where you're away. It's about, meaning Reb Nosson's talking about where one needs to. One is overwhelmed by suffering or pain or whatever that means, by fleeting thoughts or whatever. And therefore, when one's in that place, that means that you're not living in the proper headspace, and therefore you need to refocus. And this is a good tool to use. But the focus in Judaism is to really be involved in this world and to be elevating this world. But one needs to be living in a state of das in order to be doing that. What'd you say?
It seems that the second part of the text is talking about how the almost, because not everybody can get to the ideal Rama. So it seems that the ideal is to be in a certain sense of bittul. Rabbi Natan, that's what Rabbi Natan seems to think.
It's to be living with, Reb Nachman mentioned in the Torah that one can't live in that place of bittul. Meaning, tzaddikim could experience that like a real, complete experience, but we could all experience that on our own madrega, meaning that deep experience of completely being nullified within the infinite one, where one really experienced that, meaning that takes work and that takes practice. But the avoda is to be living in this world with that awareness of das. That makes sense?
With that awareness
coming in
of
out.
bittul. Sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, better.
You're saying that in general you have to be able to live your life, everything okay. But is that correct?
I didn't hear you. It was choppy.
I barely hear you.
It was choppy.
I think my question is that, do you think Rabbi Natan, can you hear me?
Yeah, better.
I think my question is, do you think that Rabbi Nachman thinks that the ideal is to live in bittul, or do you think that is something that's a little more complex than that?
Meaning, in the Torah, he says to live in complete bittul is impossible. It's impossible.
Okay, but I'm saying like to
But is
be
that
able to
get the end
be
goal?
to try to get there.
Is the end goal to be living
Not end
in
goal. It's like to be able. Is like is your movement in life towards that? Is that the ideal? Not that. Yeah.
It's
is that the ideal?
it's to be living. It's to be living with that awareness. To be living with the awareness that Hashem is completely running this world, and that every single thing that's happening to us is completely with Hashem's intent for goodness, either for us, we should be receiving everything as any painful thing as an opportunity to grow, an opportunity. Oh, it's a wake up. So let me look inside. What is Hashem saying? I don't know if I'm answering. I'm not. It doesn't look like I'm.
It's different. I think it seems to me from what it said in Reb Natan is that that's not what its intention is. Or
Meaning, I don't think over here was talking about the intention. Meaning, I'll show you what we did yesterday, because yesterday he mentioned a very powerful line. Here, let me just bring that back up. Just maybe this will help. Here, he says, the reason why a person came into this world is to be engaged in the war. What does it mean, the war? The battle. Im hataivos, with one's inner temptations, those instinctual temptations, valbabulam, and the confusion. And from that place, uladabik machshavto b'Hashem yisbarach tamid. Meaning, the point is to be engaged in this. I mean, meaning it's hard because when you isolate, by the way, it could be meaning what you're saying is true. Meaning, yes, we want to be living in that place, but it's not. It's the reason why we're here is because we're living in a world which is mixed with good and evil, and it's our opportunity to work on ourselves and to grow and to choose to engage in a relationship. And yes, it's true, meaning that's what we should be shooting for. But it's not possible to completely live in that place, because if you were, you wouldn't be living. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So I think the idea of the word of bittul is something that bothers me, because I think that even from what he says over here.
So when Reb Nachman says over here, Yochel Liskos Lebittul Ashlemus, when he says that over here, meaning
getting over your tavot is not bit.
No, for sure not. Meaning this place of bittul, b'shlemus, cannot last forever. Cannot last for a long period of time.
So if that's not what our intention is to do, so what's the point of it other than being able to?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Like, what's the point?
I cut you off.
Of it other than, no, it's okay. What's the point of it? Like, if that's not necessarily the intention. The intention is to get over your tavot, but getting over your tavot does not be tool. It's not annihilation of your yetzarim and your tavot. Right. So
100%.
other than being able to like really just kind of be in a place where you kind of put everything aside and you relax and you connect to just going over.
I can't hear you so clearly, Rabbeinu.
What's the ideal of doing that? Oh, okay, fine. So that's okay. So let's move on.
Awareness that bittul is real, or that you've seen bittul, or you just know this isn't reality.
Right.
But I'm living in it, and this reality was made for me by God to live in. I'm a part of God living in this non-reality. I am conscious of that this isn't real, but this is what I'm living in. This is my reality.
Right. Bittul helps you refocus.
Okay.
I get there without das, right?
Right. Bittul helps you refocus and get back into a place of das where you're living with that awareness.
Okay.
Amazing.
Yeah, thank you.
So just before we continue, because I didn't see time is moving, so I just wanted to give a quick just backup before we get into Tzizis, because the Svarim explained that after the sin in Gan Eden with Adam Arishon, before that the Yetzer Hara was external. What that means was that this inner conflict that we experience, these instinctual temptations we have, and this confusion that we have within us wasn't. And it was the nachash. It was an external force. And after the chait, now that conflict is from within. And what Reb Nosson is going to explain is that for one to live, and I think this ties into what Zakai was trying to get at, is that in order to live more live in an awareness that Hashem is running the world and to make proper decisions, one has to clean and purify his nefesh. That's what one has to do, because the nefesh is the kli, is the vessel where one experiences everything in this world. It's where everything is filtered through. Every experience that we have is filtered through our nefesh. And therefore, if one wants to be living more in this headspace, one has to cleanse that part of himself. And therefore, this is a continuation sort of from yesterday. So I'm going to pop it on. So this is the idea of Tzizis. Tzizis represents the idea of tikkun halavushim. Tzizis represents the idea of when one has his garments, meaning his vessels are fixed, they're pure, and they're able to receive. That Tzizis represents proper clothes, proper vessels in order to receive. Because one needs to, at first, the takin ulazakich ma'odas akelim shemalavushim kadesh yuchlu lekabel or azricha shel rashimu me'abitel elayin sofalos savra v'lo tishkach mehem. Because before one is able and wants to, if one wants to really be living with that awareness and really living with the light of the infinite one has to have proper vessels for that. And that's what Tzizis represents. And now listen to his words. These are very powerful words. Because every single person, every single Jew, in his essence, in the deepest part of his soul, he yearns and is burning very, very much to come close to Hashem. In the deepest parts of each one of us, there's a burning, yearning desire for us to be one and with Hashem. Because within the deepest parts of ourselves, because our neshamas, our souls are constantly living and focusing and living with that achdus, or living with the oneness of Hashem. Shu Ein Sof, which is the light of the infinite one. Shemisham Shorsho, that from there, that's where our root is. That's where we come from. That our deepest, our highest parts of ourselves is always yearning to come back and to be absorbed within that place. But however, because this idea, and this is maybe back to Zachary, because this idea of living in that place, of being absorbed within the infinite one, is not possible to be there always. It's always in this aspect of Rotz v'Shov, which means running and returning, meaning our lives are always ups and downs. Our lives are always ups, downs. We're experiencing high times, low times, and therefore we can't always exist there. And this comes from the verse with when Yecheskel saw the angels going back and forth from the Kisei HaKavod. And Reb Nachman focuses on this idea a lot, that growth and tshuva is always an up and down process. And therefore, when one is not in a place of bittul, when one's not in a place of transcendence, where he's completely nullified within the or, if his kalim, if his vessels, if his nefesh is not fixed and purified, then he can't receive that light which he just experienced. And therefore, he doesn't have the ability to cool off or quench his thirst. Meaning, if one doesn't work on his child, his nefesh, to work on tikkun amidos, to work and to really on self-development, and working on really growing and working on the core midos, the character traits which are holding him back, he won't be able, it will be very difficult for him to really have these deep experiences and then to use them and to live with them. And therefore, the majority of people, nishkach mimenu legamre. Therefore, for most people, that's why when they have these experiences, it's just forgotten by them and they just move on with life and they don't integrate it into their lives. And therefore, and therefore, that's why the Yetzer Hara and his army overwhelm us. Why do they overwhelm us? By the way, and that's what we were focusing on in other shirim, that the Yetzer Hara is our instinctual self. Our instinctual temptations, they just overwhelm us. Because they see that we're trying to go to the tachlis. And that's how we opened up, saying that our nefesh doesn't like change. It doesn't want change. It sees that you're trying to change, but it's comfortable where it's at. It doesn't want to move. It doesn't want to budge. And therefore he says, Befrat, and specifically Talmidei Chacham Hakshem, and specifically with the Talmidei Chachamim, the kosher ones, the pure ones, the ones Hachafetzim Mushtokim Biyoser, the ones that really desired, meaning this whole idea, people that get overwhelmed by temptations and confusion, are specifically the good people that want and desire to really live with this awareness. That they get overwhelmed, like Chazal say in Sukkah, that in Messianic times, Hashem, all the Rishon, the evil ones and the righteous ones are going to be looking at the Yetzer Hara, and they're both going to be crying. And the righteous ones are going to be crying because they're going to say, wow, look at that mountain that I climbed over. And the evil ones are going to be looking at it and say, like, wow, I can't believe it. It was just a thread that I could have broken easily. And what that shows is that when one does engage in growth and when one wants to work on himself, it's a mountain to really work on himself and to really engage in those places which are hard for a person to, or embarrassing to be involved with. It's hard to really work. It's hard to really go to those places. But someone who really doesn't engage at all, he sees just a little line because maybe that first move was easy, meaning whatever it is. It's a very deep Gemara. We could think about that together, of what that means. But hainu machmas bechinas hanal, kiyesh ben fine. And that's why he says, because with regards to bittul and living with this awareness, there's many, many different levels, and for every single person, and even within a person himself, he experiences many different changes at many different times. And that's why he says, and therefore Tzizis is the first mitzvah we do in the morning. That immediately when we wake up in the morning, and that's what we mentioned yesterday, that sleep represents when one transcends himself. And that's why immediately when one wakes up in the morning, one needs to wear tzitzis. Why? The hamshech ora tzitzis, the takin bechinas hamalbushim, because tzitzis represents the garment. First of all, it represents having that we put this beged on top of us, as we're going to see in a little bit how it represents this. But what you do physically is you're taking a guf, you're taking a beged, you're taking a levush, you're taking a garment, and which is a mitzvah, and putting that over you, which represents that you're trying to purify and fix and live with holy vessels, holy clothes that could contain clothes in general. What's the idea of clothes? What clothes do, meaning that's why this malbushim is sort of like a curse and a blessing, because it's a curse because before the chet of Adam Arishon, before the sin of Adam Arishon, it seems like the way the Sfarim talk about it is that they didn't have such barriers between them and Hashem. But now, even though we have so many barriers and so many levushim, so many clothes between us, meaning clothes separate us between one and the other. When one is truly intimate with someone, you don't wear clothes. So what clothes represent, there's a barrier, but at the same time, they're the vessels that help us contain that relationship. And therefore, we need to have clean vessels and clean clothes. And tzitzis represent that. Why? As the verse says, that when you look at tzitzis, you'll remember, we say this in Shema, you'll remember all the mitzvahs of Hashem. Why? Because he says, first of all, he says, Ki ora tzitzis b'shorsham nimshach b'mechinas histaklus al hatachlis shemisham shoros kol haTorah. Because tzitzis, the light of tzitzis, represents, as the verse says, that you look at them, and through looking at the tzitzis, you'll remember all the mitzvahs. So just like when we look and we gaze at the tachlis, we if one focuses on living with the awareness of Hashem echad u'shmo echad, that Hashem is one, and his name is one, the same thing, that through looking at your tzitzis, that will help awaken within one to remember the mitzvahs of Hashem, to remember why he's here in this world. But on a deeper level, because tchelas is really the aspect of tzitzis, which is the blue string, which really represents this idea even more. Why? Because tchelas, first of all, is the same word as tachlis. And that's what we keep talking about. Tachlis means the purpose of why we're here. The tachlis, which is to get to that place of where we're living with that awareness, where we're one with Hashem. So tchelas and tachlis are the same word. And he quotes the Gemara, which says that tchelas, when one looks at a blue string, that reminds him of the sea, and the sea reminds him of the sky, and the sky reminds him of the kisei hakavod, which reminds him of the, whatever that means, the throne of God. Meaning through looking at tzitzis, that taps himself into, helps him focus. And that's why specifically in this verse, where it says, you shall look at your tzitzis, where tzitzis, look at them, and through them, you'll remember the mitzvahs of Hashem, and don't go after your heart or your eyes that bring you to lust after them. What does that mean? That is not to look at the nothingness of this world, all the distractions of this world. Rather, tzitzis represents, don't look at the distractions of this world. Rather, tchelas, look at the tachlis, look at your tzitzis, which are a constant reminder for why you're here. And through that, through focusing on the tachlis, which is parallel to having that experience of bittul, through looking at your tzitzis, which represents the vessels, then you're able to have proper vessels. I realized that this was a lot, but maybe should we speak that out one more time? Give out. Round 2. So give out. That was very high. I just took off also. So how you doing, Rabbi Yael? Where you took off? You went flying with me? Okay, good. Because I just went flying, baby. Flying high. It's the best. It's Babish the best. Maybe, I don't know how many people were here yesterday, so let me just give a little backdrop to where this is what we were talking about. We were talking about how when one is engaged in this world, when he's really trying to work on himself, when he's really engaged in the Mochemes Hashem of trying to grow and trying to work on himself, what happens is it gets tiring. One could get bombarded, and it takes a lot of effort, and therefore Hashem instilled within us the idea of sleep. What is sleep? Sleep represents really transcending. It's really disconnecting, detaching from that inner battle, that inner conflict within. And hopefully if one goes to sleep with the proper intentions that I'm going to sleep so that I could work on myself, so that I could re-energize, sleep takes us into that place of bittul. And from there, when one wakes up, if one had a good sleep, then he wakes up re-energized. However, as we mentioned in the Torah, when one comes back into his vessels, specifically at that time, one could be bombarded more with confusion and temptations more than even started with, because we gave the example of when two people are fighting and one's on the bottom. When he's getting taken out, he comes back more intense. And we got into that. Therefore, in the morning, there's an intense time of getting out of bed, that whole process. And therefore, we need to do Netilas Yadayim, which represents pouring water on one's hand, which in this Torah represents Torah, because Torah is compared to water. But what he said is, the way we ended off yesterday is that after one wakes up, we engage. Not only do we immerse ourselves in Torah, conceptually, the idea of meaning washing one's hands, but even more than that, that's why right in the morning we get involved with mitzvahs. We say we have Tzizis, Tefillin, Kriya Shema. We get right involved. So this opened us up to Tzizis. So Tzizis is a garment. It's a mitzvah which is done by putting a garment on. The idea of a garment is that a garment represents the vessels of ourself. It's what contains our neshama. Our nefesh is the container. Our physical body, our emotions, our thoughts are all the container of the way that we could experience, our neshama could experience in this world. So tzitzis represent that. And not only that, tzitzis represents having a fixed and pure vessel. How is that? Because tzitzis represents, as the verse says, that you look at them and you'll remember all the mitzvahs. Again, tzitzis represents this whole pattern that we've been talking about, that when one is not seeing the world through the lens of Hashem Echad U'Shmo Echad, you need to look at the tachlis, which is going into a state of bittul, nullifying himself to the oneness, and then from that, one could live with that place. And that's what tzitzis represents, because tzitzis, the word is, part of it is having that tchelas, the tchelas string, which represents, when you look at it, it looks like the sea, which looks like the sky, which then reminds us of Hashem. And as the verse says, that you look at tzitzis, they help you remember why we're here and what we're doing in this world. L'chaim, I hope that came off clearly. Where's everyone at? How's everyone doing? L'chaim Tovim.
L'chaim.
Where are you at? What are you, sitting in a swing?
Yeah, it's my hotel. It's my quarantine hotel.
What do you mean it's your quarantine hotel?
Sydney.
Uh,
I thought that one would get you. We're in Sichman, I think it's called. It's this Arab town.
Nice.
Yeah, it's nice. We're right across from